August 19, 1944, Wehrmacht Headquarters, East Prussia. Inside the reinforced concrete halls of the Wolfslayer, General Oberst Alfred Jodl stood over a table covered with maps of France. Red and blue grease pencil lines showed the Allied breakout from Normandy and the breathtaking advance of General George S. Patton's Third Army. To Jodl and the men around him, the situation appeared alarming, but also reassuring. Alarming because the Americans were moving faster than anyone had expected. Reassuring because, according to every law of warfare the Germans understood, that advance could not possibly continue. Patton's tanks were now more than 400 miles from the Normandy beaches. His spearheads were racing eastward toward the Seine, outpacing even the most optimistic Allied planning assumptions. To German officers raised on hard experience, this was not genius, it was recklessness. Armored warfare had limits, and those limits were defined not by courage or tactics, but by fuel, ammunition, spare parts, and food. And no army in history had ever outrun logistics and survived. From his position at Hitler's headquarters, Jodl reviewed the numbers. A single armored division consumed roughly 150,000 gallons of fuel per day while advancing. Infantry divisions required hundreds of tons of supplies daily. Armored divisions required even more. Patton's Third Army commanded 12 divisions, spread across a 60-mile front. German intelligence tracked American fuel burn rates carefully. The calculations were merciless. Patton needed at least 12,000 tons of supplies every single day, hauled over shattered French roads from ports still under development. Even with perfect organization, which no army possessed, the math said collapse was imminent. To Jodl and to every experienced German general, the conclusion was unavoidable. The Americans had reached their culminating point. Within days, perhaps hours, Patton's Third Army would grind to a halt. Fuel would run out. Ammunition stocks would dry up. The Wehrmacht would gain precious time to regroup behind the Seine, rebuild defensive lines, and perhaps hold until winter. History was on Germany's side. It always had been when logistics were stretched too far. What Jodl did not know was that 125 miles to the west, an answer to his calculations was already rolling eastward. At that very moment, nearly 6,000 American trucks were pouring onto a network of French roads in an operation so audacious that German military science had never even imagined it possible. Headlights blazed through the night, openly defying every rule of blackout discipline. Engines roared without pause. Every 24 hours, this moving river of steel delivered more than 12,500 tons of fuel, ammunition, rations, and spare parts directly to the front lines. This was the Red Ball Express. Within 72 hours, Patton's supposedly immobilized tanks would smash through German positions along the Seine. Within a week, Paris would be liberated. Within a month, American forces would be standing on Germany's western frontier. The Wehrmacht's most brilliant minds were about to learn a lesson that would permanently redefine modern warfare, a lesson delivered not by tanks or bombers, but by trucks. The German General Staff's confidence rested on hard-earned experience. The Wehrmacht had pioneered blitzkrieg and revolutionized combined arms warfare. They understood the tyranny of supply lines better than anyone alive. In Russia, German advances had stalled not because of Soviet resistance at first, but because logistics failed. Trucks broke down on primitive roads. Horses, still responsible for nearly 80% of German transport, could not keep up with armored spearheads. Rail gauges differed, creating bottlenecks hundreds of miles behind the front. Entire offensives had collapsed because supplies simply could not arrive fast enough. German officers believed the Americans now faced the same fate. General Heinrich von Luttwitz, who would later command XL-47 Panzer Corps, wrote in July 1944, "The Americans face the same logistical impossibility we faced in Russia. Their mechanical advantage becomes a liability. Machines require fuel, parts, and constant maintenance. They have advanced too far, too fast. History teaches what comes next." German intelligence tracked American fuel burn rates with satisfaction. A Sherman tank averaged less than 1 mile per gallon on roads and far worse cross-country. Infantry divisions required hundreds of tons of supplies daily. Armored divisions required even more. Patton's 12 divisions meant an impossible daily requirement over roads the retreating Germans had systematically destroyed. Even if the Americans had unlimited trucks, which they did not, and perfect roads, which they certainly did not, the advance could not continue. On August 20th, Generalmajor Siegfried Westphal calculated the situation bluntly. Even under ideal conditions, Patton's advance could not be sustained more than 48 hours. Physical laws could not be violated, not even by American industry. But while German officers trusted the mathematics of scarcity, the Americans were about to rewrite the arithmetic of war. On August 25, 1944, in a requisitioned French chateau near Le Mans, Lieutenant Colonel Lauren A. Ayers of the Motor Transport Service addressed a room full of skeptical officers. The traditional supply system had collapsed under the strain of Patton's advance. Railways were wrecked. Scheduled convoys were inadequate. Depot-based distribution could not keep up. Ayers laid out a plan that sounded insane. He said, "We're going to create a one-way highway from the beaches and ports straight to the front. Trucks will run 20 hours a day, no stopping except for fuel and breakdowns. We'll move at least 12,500 tons daily directly to the front." The name came from railroad terminology. A Red Ball freight shipment was an express load that took priority over everything else. The Red Ball Express would operate on the same principle. Absolute priority, no delays, no exceptions.
The system violated nearly every rule of European military logistics. 2 parallel one-way routes, one eastbound for loaded trucks, one westbound for empties. 24-hour operations with headlights blazing, 5-minute convoy intervals, average speeds of 35 miles per hour, mobile maintenance teams every 50 miles, military police empowered to remove any vehicle that fell below minimum speed. Mechanical failures were pushed off the road and abandoned if necessary. Colonel Charles O. Thrasher of the Advanced Section Communications Zone reviewed the projected numbers and shook his head. Nearly 6,000 trucks operating at 90% availability. According to every logistics textbook ever written, it was impossible. Within 36 hours, it was reality. On August 26th, drivers from the 3916th Quartermaster Truck Company climbed into their GMC CCKW 2.5-ton trucks, the legendary Deuce and a Half. They loaded 105mm artillery shells bound for Patton's Duns more than 300 miles east. Most of those drivers were African American, serving in a segregated army that denied them combat roles but depended utterly on their labor. Of the 23,000 men who would operate the Red Ball Express, roughly 75% were black soldiers. Men who, back home, were barred from white restaurants and hotels were now responsible for keeping the most celebrated American general in motion. German racial theorists would never recover from that contradiction. Within hours, the drivers created their own culture. They painted slogans on their trucks: Detroit to Berlin Express, Patton's Blood Bank, Hitler, here we come. They enforced their own rules. Slow vehicles pulled off immediately. Breakdowns were shoved into ditches. Any truck under 20 miles per hour was a roadblock. By August 28th, German reconnaissance units began reporting something they had never seen before. Continuous columns of vehicles, headlights visible for miles, no spacing, no camouflage. One unit radioed, "Estimate 1,000 vehicles per hour. Americans have abandoned all military precaution." This should have been suicidal. Headlights invited air attack. Continuous columns were perfect artillery targets. Yet the Americans did not care. They did not hide because they did not fear. General Edgar Feuchtinger of the 21st Panzer Division personally observed the Red Ball Express on August 30th. His report to Army Group B reflected growing alarm. The enemy operates a supply system beyond our comprehension. Vehicles pass day and night without pause. It is not military science. It is mass production applied to warfare.
That was the key difference. German doctrine emphasized conservation. American doctrine assumed waste and planned for it. Where Germans tried to prevent breakdowns, Americans assumed 30% daily mechanical failure and overwhelmed the problem with redundancy. Where Germans followed strict hierarchy, Americans decentralized authority. Sergeants made decisions that would have required a German general's approval. The numbers were staggering. In its first week, the Red Ball Express delivered nearly 90,000 tons of supplies. Trucks averaged 1.5 round trips per day over distances approaching 700 miles. The operation consumed hundreds of thousands of gallons of fuel daily, yet fuel never ran out. Part of the answer was another logistical miracle the Germans failed to anticipate: Operation Pluto. Pipelines laid under the English Channel. Fuel flowed directly from England into France through underwater pipes the Germans never detected. Forward fuel dumps appeared every 25 miles. Tanker trucks ran parallel convoys. No vehicle waited more than 10 minutes for gas. German officers reviewing aerial photos were stunned. The Americans have fuel dumps larger than our entire strategic reserves, one observed. They burn gasoline moving gasoline. This is not war as we understand it. It is industrial overflow.
Patton's divisions began advancing at rates that shattered German planning assumptions: 40, 50, even 60 miles per day. On September 1st, the 4th Armored Division advanced 35 miles in the morning, halted to refuel at noon, then advanced another 32 miles that afternoon. German defensive plans assumed maximum advances of 30 miles per day under ideal conditions. American logistics rendered those assumptions meaningless. General Heinz Guderian initially dismissed the reports as propaganda, then intercepted radio traffic confirmed them. Worse, the Americans often transmitted openly, confident they could move faster than Germans could react. The psychological impact was devastating. German soldiers heard American trucks all night, every night, endless engines, endless supplies. While German units rationed ammunition, American artillery fired without restraint. During the reduction of Metz, U.S. artillery fired more than 100,000 rounds in a single day. The Red Ball Express delivered every shell. The human cost was enormous. Drivers went 72 hours without sleep, fueled by benzodrine and determination. Accidents killed hundreds. Trucks burned, overturned, collided in fog and rain. Average vehicle lifespan dropped to a third of normal. Yet the operation never slowed. New trucks arrived weekly. Replacement drivers were trained in days. German officers calculated that the Americans destroyed more trucks in a month than the Wehrmacht possessed in all of France, and yet American transport capacity increased. French civilians along the route witnessed abundance after years of occupation. Drivers shared rations with children: chocolate, cigarettes, soap. German intelligence noted the effect with alarm. Resistance activity surged. Civilians no longer doubted who would win. When strain finally appeared in early September, German commanders believed the end had come. Convoy intervals increased, speeds dropped. Then, within 72 hours, the Americans reorganized. Transfer points were created, routes shortened, more trucks assigned, delivery rates increased. Even air supply was used at a scale Germans considered impossible. Hundreds of C-47s delivered thousands of tons daily. The Luftwaffe had barely managed a fraction of that at Stalingrad. By October, rail lines began catching up. The Red Ball Express, intended to last 10 days, had operated for 82. It delivered more than 400,000 tons of supplies over 122 million ton-miles. German commanders drew the only conclusion possible. Field Marshal Walter Model wrote, "We were not defeated primarily by tanks or planes, we were defeated by American trucks." Among German prisoners, one sentiment became universal. They had not been beaten by superior tactics, but by a superior civilization, one capable of turning factories, highways, and ordinary soldiers into an unstoppable logistical weapon. The Red Ball Express ended in November 1944. Its legacy did not.
It changed warfare forever. It proved that in the industrial age, logistics is strategy, that the side which can deliver more, faster, farther will win, no matter how brilliant the opposing generals may be. And it proved something else as well, that 23,000 mostly African-American truck drivers, men denied equality at home, had helped defeat Nazi Germany at 35 miles per hour. Not with rifles, not with tanks, but with trucks.